Okay, body weight lunge would seem like it's a relatively basic exercise, but there's actually, you should pretty much think of it like a single leg body weight squat in terms of looking at a lot of the positioning of the body. You really want to watch for the same things that you would watch out for in squat. You want to watch out for when they step, whether it's a forward lunge, a reverse lunge, a walking lunge, whatever it is. You still want to watch out for the knee shooting beyond the toe. And you want to watch out for, even with no weight, the tendency for someone to want to dump their body forward to recruit some of the lower back muscles to help them get up. This is especially if you're trying to do lunges with somebody who's a little bit on the overweight side, which I typically wouldn't recommend. But when you see people who are carrying a little bit of extra weight, especially in the upper body, they'll have a tendency to, when they step out into a lunge, they want to use their upper body to kind of muscle themselves up rather than letting all the drive come from the legs. So that's something especially to watch out for with somebody like that. Okay, so let's start with just a regular, straightforward, step back lunge. Treat it like there are two lines basically painted on the floor. Think of it like a pair of railroad tracks. Okay, they're both about shoulder width apart. Your feet want to stay on those two lines no matter where you're at in the movement, whether you're stepping out, whether you're coming back, whether you're doing a reverse lunge, or whether you're doing the walking lunge. So as wide as my feet are now, that's how wide they should be when I step out. Okay, a lot of people when they step out into a lunge, they'll want to step one foot in front of the other, kind of tightrope walk it. That's why everybody has balance issues with the lunge. Okay, you have no stability, you have no base, and it forces your hips to kind of rotate to one side. So right off the gate, you know, your lunge is relatively doomed from the start, if not from a balance perspective. From a body alignment perspective, you're going to run into some hip impingement issues and potentially just some real awkward tilts and twists that are not going to be very beneficial in terms of getting a lot of repetition. So instead of feet or shoulder width here, when I step out into my lunge, I want to maintain that shoulder width position. Now you're in a lot more stable position. You should be able to have someone kind of stand on any side of you and push you around a little bit and not have a tendency to falter too much. Okay, the weight tends to be sitting either on the middle of the foot or on my front heel, depending on how long of a step you're taking. The longer step you take out, the more it's going to tend to work the glutes and hamstrings on the trailing leg. And if you take a little bit more of a shallow step, to the point where you're still able to maintain the knee behind the toes, it's going to be more of a quadricep style lunge where you're driving primarily off the front foot. So the long step is basically as long as you can take while still maintaining an upright body position. It's going to definitely have a tendency to pull your rear heel up off of the ground, and you're just going to take your back leg, push it down toward the ground. You want to stop just shy, if you can, of actually touching the ground, and then either drive back to your original position or carry it on into a walking style lunge, either with a balanced step in the middle or right into the next stride. That part is kind of whatever works for you. If you need it for the balance, great. If you don't sweat it too much. Really the only other variation from there is going to be the reverse lunge. Standing straight ahead. Now you're just going to pull the back leg this way. This is a little bit tricky when it comes to maintaining that shoulder width position because you can't see where your foot's going. Okay, so a lot of people will have a little bit of trouble trying to root that foot. They may need to take a look back to check their foot position the first few times that they do it, but you obviously want to develop it to the point where that's not necessary. Stepping straight back, again, drop the back knee down. Chest should stay relatively upright. Hands are at the sides, on the hips, behind the head like a prisoner style movement, whatever you want to do with that. Supplementing with dumbbells, barbells, and back to the original position. Okay, so we're going to work on 3 different variations of the lunge. We'll have you do a couple of just the regular in-place forward step and back lunge. We'll alternate legs a couple of times. We'll do the same thing with the reverse pattern, and then we'll do 5 or 6 steps of the walking lunge. We'll take a look at some positioning stuff on that. Okay, so again, positioning is feet shoulder width apart. Let's do just hands at your sides for hand position lesson. You can do hands at your sides, on the hips, behind the head. Just find a spot for your hands so that you're not using them for momentum to get you through the movement. Okay, so hands at your sides. Picture it like you're just standing on a pair of railroad tracks that are spaced shoulder width apart. Let's do a relatively deep step the first time around to work on more of the glute and hamstring of the trailing leg, and then she's dropping the knee back. So again, the knee is staying right well behind the toes in this case, upright body position, and then drive off the front heel to bring you back to the original spot. Alternate legs again. Yeah, relatively deep step on this one, and then drive off the front foot to come back. And then let's do a couple of somewhat shorter steps, more for the quadriceps. Good. And with the shorter step, the stress tends to be more on the middle of the foot rather than the front heel, so that's where you're more driving off of when you come back. Okay, let's do a couple of reverse lunges. So now in this case, you kind of got the mirror in front of you, so you kind of use that to give you an idea of where your foot is stepping in terms of maintaining that shoulder width position. Reverse lunges are great for somebody who has a lot of knee issues because you're not getting that shock on the front foot when you step out. This can, with someone with some bad knees, you get a little bit of just that jarring motion. When you step onto a reverse lunge, it's a very soft movement. So this is typically what I'll have somebody who has some knee problems start with the lunge. They may never even get into the forward moving style lunge. Okay, now let's go ahead and face this direction. Let's do just about half a dozen walking lunges. Let's do all long strides for these. Right now, she's doing it without having to take an additional step in between lunges to regain her balance. With someone who's a little bit less coordinated, you may have to have them pause at shoulder width. Just do a couple with that little pause right there, just to kind of reset their balance. Good. So again, it's basically just, if you think of it like a single leg squat in terms of a lot of your body positioning, then it gets a lot less complicated than it might seem. So that's it for lunges.